Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Lizabeth Wesely-Casella. Lizabeth is the founder and CEO of L12 Services, LLC, a firm specializing in internal communications, training, and executive virtual assistance. In 2014, Lizabeth organized and led a process and communication change coalition for First Lady Michelle Obama's signature program, Let's Move. Today, she uses her communication, collaboration, and lean process design skills to identify where businesses can overcome challenges related to scaling, process breakdown, workflow management, and culture. Lizabeth is the advisory board chair for the Association of Virtual Assistants and member of the Mental Health Advisory Council of Because I Said I Would, a member of the American Society of Quality, as well as a member of Alpha Sigma Lambda Honor Society. Please join me in welcoming Lizabeth Wesely-Casella. Hey, Lizabeth.
Hi, Tammy. Thank you so much. I really appreciate spending some time with you. I always love spending time with you.
Me and you both. It's like, I feel like I've known you forever, but we met because we are both in the recognized expert community with Dory Clark. And,
that's right.
And so we've gotten to know each other a little bit, and I knew that you had a really interesting career story, an interesting background, and I really wanted to have you on the show because I think that it's important for people to hear your story and to understand what it took for you to get to where you are today. So let's talk about that. So let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about some of the early years.
Oh my goodness. I appreciate that. Thank you. I feel as though maybe part of my story is generational. And then maybe some of my story, well, certainly my story is impacted by the fact that I'm a woman. But I was raised an only child, and my parents came from old families, not old like as in old money, but old as in my grandfather, first generation grandfather, was born in 1900. So older parents of my parents. And I think that there was some generational ideology that was passed through them to me, where I didn't grow up having any idea that I would eventually become an entrepreneur. I also didn't really focus on what I wanted to do when I grew up, other than, I want to have things, I want to do things, but I didn't know what impact I wanted to have. So my earlier years, I was, cruising right along when my friends were getting ready to take the SATs, and not only was I not prepared to take them, I wasn't encouraged to take them. I think I'm probably the only kid in my high school that didn't, not because I refused to, though I will fully admit to not being a great high school student, but because I didn't know that everybody does that. Like, that's part of the maturation process when you're going through school. I wasn't prepared to go to college. I wasn't prepared to do a lot of the things that I eventually ended up doing. I went, a circuitous route to get to them.
Yes. But we know you got there, but I think what you're saying is that you had in those early years, those formative years, there were just certain things that were somewhat norms kind of around you. And yet there was a certain awareness that you had of them and yet didn't necessarily relate to for yourself in some ways. Would that be right?
Certainly. I'm the first woman in my family on both sides to have gone to college. I am, I can say that some of the norms were maybe not helpful in helping me get here, but some of them were incredibly helpful. Like I was imbued with a very strong work ethic.
Yeah.
Even though that work ethic didn't teach me that women go to college and own their own businesses.
Yeah.
It definitely taught me whatever job it is that you have, you take pride in the fact that you do it well and you do a hard day's work for a hard day's dollar.
Right. Right. So take us through, you graduated high school. And so some of your high school friends went off to college, most of them. You went off to work, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I knew that I was a good worker and I knew that I was clever. So I knew I could talk my way into any job that I needed to.
Wow,
And
that's a pretty big thing. I mean, at that age to already have that sense of yourself, you know?
well, I'd been working since I was 16, and I would go to school looking like a rugrat, and then I'd go home real quick and change into something glamorous, and I was a hostess for the evening. So I kind of had that dual life going. So I tasted a little bit of what it was like to be an adult.
Yeah.
I just believed that my limitations were traditional, that everybody thought the way that I did, that if you work from the ground up, you will understand the business and you will eventually be able to run it because you've done every job available underneath that umbrella. And that's not actually how society works anymore. It used to.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are some cases where that 100% has been the guiding light for very successful people.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, you train early on to perform the different jobs within an organization or within corporate society. And my view and my estimation of my skill set was always to get in at the bottom and work your way up. Get in at the bottom someplace else, work your way up. Mm-hmm. And eventually I did do very well for myself with that, but I didn't reach the types of jobs that I really wanted to be performing. I was always in an administrative support position, executive administrative support, so it was nothing to sneeze at. Mm-hmm. But I was never going to get from that level into the echelon of management or the C-suite. I was never going to be able to make decisions and take risks and, guide vision. And by the time I was about 37, 38 years old, I realized that that's where my heart really was. And that my skill sets were transferable. So why not transfer them to supporting myself and seeing what I could do out in the big world with my own gig. At that point, it was a gig. It was just me seeing who I could hustle and, work for.
Right.
But eventually that turned into a vision of a firm, and that principle has helped me to overcome obstacles that I didn't see, dangers that I wasn't aware of, and what you're blissfully not aware of, you don't fear.
Right.
But then in other cases, it's also meant that I've learned some hard lessons along the way too.
Sure. Well, it's interesting to hear about. It would be interesting to hear about what some of those lessons were, or what are some of the things that you did along the way that led to you reaching that point, So clearly you didn't remain in the restaurant business. You moved on from that. How did you even make that transition, or even realize you needed to move on to something else? What spurred that on?
Well, it's funny because in my mind, it makes perfect sense, but describing this to some other people, they don't connect the dots the way that I do. So I'll do my best here. But my philosophy was, working in a restaurant as a hostess or in a service position means I was taking care of people. Mm-hmm. So with that mindset, why couldn't I do that in an office setting? Why couldn't I do it in an office setting for someone in finance versus doing it in construction? So it was skill sets that were transferable, but different ways of deploying those skill sets that allowed me to grow. So, going from restaurant to my first office job, it really meant that I was good at making sure that the people who came in sat down and felt as though they were taken care of and got to their appointment efficiently. And the people, around me had the, copy paper and the coffee that they needed. Going from that position to the construction industry, it meant something completely different. So how would I be taking care of people or being of service? Well, that meant that I would identify areas where there were holes. So, the documents for the construction project aren't properly filed or there's no filing system for them. I'll create that. So I became a professional at identifying where bottlenecks and broken process were and filling those voids.
It's interesting though to hear you reflect back on those earlier years and knowing that there you were, high school education, yet you were thinking really quite critically and creatively about who you were, what skills you had, and how you could apply them in a number of different settings. So you went from a restaurant environment to an office environment and then into construction.
To a trailer environment.
Right. But, I was going to say like a construction office environment, which, that could look like a lot of different things, so it sounds like a trailer environment, like on a construction site, it sounds like. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting, though, to hear how you thought about those things and how you saw yourself, functioning or fitting into those different places as an employee, as a worker, as somebody who had something to contribute. And you didn't let anything get in your way, it sounds like, if I'm interpreting this correctly. I'm sure it wasn't always a smooth ride from one thing to the next, but you certainly had a chance to experience a few different industries and businesses along the way. And I just think about, how many kids today would think that flexibly and creatively about, well, I've got these skills. I could apply them in all these different places. I could be a hostess in a restaurant one day, and the next day I could think of myself as somebody who is of service or who is good with different types of personalities or who can organize, or who has operations skills. You think about, people don't realize when you're a hostess, you have to figure out how things are going to fit and the timing and the flow. It's like operations management in some ways. And, I think people underestimate what that entails. And there's even software for all that you have to learn. And so, I just find it fascinating that you were able to take yourself from one place to the next over those, let's say your 20s, those earlier years, and give yourself those opportunities to keep learning new things as you went along, and had that sort of foundation of confidence to keep moving yourself around. Because I don't know, I remember those years for myself or other people I knew at that time. I think there are a lot of people at that age who have maybe perhaps a little bit of a crisis of either confidence or identity, and they're still trying to figure out who they are. And it sounds like you went about it in a more exploratory way.
I really appreciate that. Those are some very, very kind words, and I'm going to keep them close to my heart because, like everybody, I still have these crises, and I certainly had them in my 20s when I was, getting into my mid to later 20s,
Yeah.
I realized what I'd missed out on. I knew then the mistakes that I made in high school and thought I'm too old to fix them.
So what
They're
kinds
just
of
not
mistakes do
fixable.
you think you made, though? What were the...
Not preparing for college. There's zero chance that a middle income white female high school student from Scottsdale, Arizona shouldn't go to college or should be nobody should feel sorry for me because the cards were not stacked against me.
Yeah.
Children from much more difficult environments find their way to college.
Yeah.
I think the difference may be that at that time, we're talking the 80s. Yes,
Right.
we're talking the 80s. I was in high school. There wasn't a support structure within the schools that identified kids that were at risk. And the area was growing so quickly. I think it was just overwhelmed. There probably weren't, enough guidance counselors or something. Somebody normally would catch the only kid not taking their SATs.
Right. I think you're right. Yeah.
So by the time I was in my 20s, I did feel that loss of a competitive edge. And I felt some of my dreams going away. That's probably why when I was 29, I gave away everything that wouldn't fit in my Toyota Celica and sight unseen drove from Phoenix to Washington, D.C.
Oh, well, tell us more about that. Well, first of all, you're saying a Toyota Celica, so we know that that's a car I remember. So you put out, so at 29 years old, you packed up your Toyota Celica, which for those of you who aren't familiar with that car, it's a small car. It would be like, what would it be like today? It would be smaller than a Corolla, or about like a Corolla, or like well, anyway, it's a small car. Doesn't fit a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So what made you decide DC? What was there?
I think that part of it was a major drive to have that big life adventure before I aged out of the ability to do so. I certainly didn't think of it in those terms. I don't think I had that language yet, but I needed to experience the big adventure, the big adventure of your 20s. Some people, go hike around, and some people go intern at these fabulous jobs. And I just had spent 15 years in Oregon and 15 years in Arizona, and it was time to do something new and different. Because I was in the construction industry, what I saw firsthand was how our cities were being either built or repurposed. And my mom has muscular dystrophy. So her aging and what that would do to her ability to be independent has been top of mind ever since I can remember. And when I saw what Phoenix was doing in what they were calling at that time smart growth, which is really multi-use, it intrigued me. And I thought, well, heck, if we're doing this here in Phoenix, I should probably go tell somebody that this concept exists and that it's a really smart way that we should be rebuilding our cities. So I'm going to go to Washington and tell somebody. It was a full-on Mr. Smith Goes to Washington moment. I'd never been here. I'd never studied politics. I'd never studied civics. None of it. I was just going to go tell somebody. I don't know why. And so I drove out here. I had $1,500 in my pocket. And I holed up at a Holiday Inn for a couple days looking for a place to live. I found one on Capitol Hill, of all crazy places, which is unheard of. I was walking down the street. 2 people were in a fight. 1 person was moving out. I said to the person who was still standing in the yard, "Do you have a room to rent?" And I think out of spite, he said, "Yes." I said, "I've got first and last month's, rent money, hopefully. If I don't work out, I'll be gone. I just need someplace to store my stuff and get a job." And it turned out to be great because he was my roommate for the next 2 years. And I eventually ended up marrying the boy next door.
Wow. That did work out, huh?
It worked out really well.
So,
Sorry.
were you able to get everyone in DC on board with the mixed use and let them know what was going on in Arizona?
You know what? I actually probably came closer than I realistically should have. The closest I got was that I immediately got a job within the industry association for construction that I was familiar with. So I worked for a great association, which opened the door to nonprofits for me. And because I'd had that position, I then became somewhat competitive in the market for the administrative skill sets that I had. And I worked at a couple nonprofits for the next number of years. Along the way, I did get married, and my husband, we got married in October, and New Year's Eve, my husband said, I've got a great New Year's resolution for you. And I remember thinking, if he says that he thinks I should go on a diet, I'm going to kill him. It'll be the shortest marriage ever. And he said, I think you should go to college. And I said, I can't do that. I'm too old. There's no way.
How old were you at that point?
36.
Oh.
Like, I look back now and I'm like, I was just a baby. But I thought for sure I was way too old. But I made the mistake of mentioning it to my best friend, who happened to be someone that I worked with. And she mentioned it in passing, supposedly, to the president of the organization. And that woman was Barbara Kennelly, and she wrote me an entrance letter for the college that she went to. So a lot of things fell in place for me to go back to school. But when I did, I really enjoyed it. And it has been a huge, not only confidence builder, but a huge door opener, because it's allowed me to build a lot of my career opportunities I wouldn't have had otherwise. Not because I wasn't smart enough, not because I didn't have the experience.
Oh, right.
But we're still living in a city where that piece of paper on your wall matters.
It does. And we know, and I'm sure you knew, that even without that piece of paper, that there are lots of jobs that you could do without it.
So many, but I wasn't able to apply for them.
Right. So what did you major in? I'm curious.
Business administration.
Oh, okay, there you go.
And then I eventually got my master's certificate in Lean Six Sigma. So that means, bottom line, it means that I'm good at talking to people, understanding where the wastes and problems are, and solving those in a collective environment.
Wow, that rolls right off the tongue so beautifully. I like that. So you did end up going to, I really think that, this is just my opinion, but I think that most people would actually benefit from going to college a little later than 18 anyway. I think that the fact that you had, a lot of experience in the real world before you went back to school was you probably got a lot more out of it as a result. And I've talked to a lot of people who waited a couple of years before they went to school, and they were really glad they did that. And I know for me, I went to grad school. I was close to 30 when I went to grad school. And I think that was also a very wise decision, not to just jump right out of undergrad into grad school, because you really do need to have something else to bounce those experiences off of, to really, I think, get something out of the depth of the education. So
I agree.
Yeah. So now, while you were in school, were you working at that time as well, or were you just a student?
No, I was working, and I was in an environment that was really conducive to that. The people that I was working for and working with, they were all really supportive. But I took a full load and worked full time, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was the ability to go to class and then come to work the next day and apply what I learned. So I am glad that I went to school to bolster the knowledge that I already gained rather than going to school to try and figure out what I wanted to do, because I'd probably still be an undergrad if that was the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes the world throws you into things, you learn that thing, you learn you like it, and then you just become an expert at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So were there things that you got out of going to school at that point in your career that really helped you solidify or identify some directions you wanted to go in once you had your degree? Or were you already on the path to entrepreneurship at that point?
I wasn't on the entrepreneur path yet.
Okay.
But it did allow me to up my game as an executive assistant. It opened my eyes to the idea of professional development, and making sure that I looked with a critical eye at different products that came out or different platforms that came about, because the new latest greatest software today 6 months from now may not even be around.
Right.
And a lot of people get shiny object syndrome, especially people in leadership positions who, let's say they spend their weekend catching up on reading and they've picked up HBR and they just found this super new cool thing that does XYZ.
Right.
And they come into the office and they say to their executive assistant, I want to do XYZ and this is the thing we should use.
Right.
A good assistant will say, yeah, this is a really great article about a thing that may do that, but you realize that you are going to be paying a lot of money to be beta testing somebody else's just designed thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give it a little while to steep and get the bugs out before we implement it.
Right, right. And so I'm curious, did you go right into grad school from undergrad? Did you know you wanted to do Lean Six Sigma, or did you have a little break in between?
No, school has saved me a couple different times. I had a business that was really a good business for me, and it was a great starter business. Unfortunately, like many entrepreneurs, my first business failed.
Oh.
So when I shuttered that business, I needed to keep my mind occupied and I needed to learn something new. I needed to really obviously I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, I needed to find the reason why I failed. And so I decided to go back to school, and it makes perfect sense in retrospect. I went back to school to learn about processes. Where in the process did I go wrong? And in the long run, because I know that my first business failed to a certain degree because of communication and relationship building and the inability to be savvy enough to perform business tests, I learned those things and I was better at building the second time. Not only did I have the experience under my belt of some of the do's and don'ts, but I had quantifiable reasons why I should take some risks or slow some things down and take measured steps in order to assure that I was offering something that the public wanted, speaking the language of the customer, really providing true value rather than, just a lot of talk and shiny object syndrome.
Right. Well, it sounds like, you've mentioned this several times already about lessons learned and things that didn't go well, and how you really took those to heart and really tried to take a step back from them, reflect on them, and really then use them as a springboard into what you would go and do next, or maybe what you might not do next based on what you learned, right? So it sounds like you've really capitalized or leveraged mistakes as a path forward in some ways. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It's not going to be my tagline, but it makes perfect sense.
Okay. Well,
I think that it's important to do that. We have a limited amount of time on this planet. We have a limited amount of time from even there to, probably really want to work or have bodies that work. If I'm going to be approachable and I'm hopefully going to fill any leadership roles, I need to be able to say, I made these mistakes. It makes me common to you.
Right.
Or I've made these mistakes and listen to what I have to say about them because you can avoid them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So open to teaching other people and showing them the way. Yeah.
100%. I am a fierce collaborator. I'm
Yeah.
not much of a competitor. I can be competitive when I need to be, but that's not my natural MO. My natural MO is to say, oh, you're coming along this way too? Cool. I've got these skill sets. You've got those skill sets. When we meet that third person, let's see what they need. Maybe we can both serve them. Maybe you'll do better this time. Maybe I'll do better. We'll see.
So do you do a lot of that in your business today? Do you do? Yeah. Mm-hmm. What does that look like? Tell us what your business looks like today.
Well, I am so grateful for the team I have around me. The women that I work with, and not to say that we wouldn't hire men. I just happen to have a team of all women right now. They're amazing. They are probably a good, reason why I stayed sane during this last, horrible, terrible, no good 2020 year.
Right.
I was able to build out the firm the way I envisioned it. That doesn't mean that every idea that I've had has been a good one, but it does mean that I was able to find people to surround myself with who aligned with my values. And so when I said early on, I want to make sure that we have an ongoing internship program. I want to elevate the profile of the executive virtual assistant. Our industry is important. It's for too long been looked at as somebody who just fell into it, or, I've got a computer and a kitchen table and I can do this job. That's not what an executive virtual assistant is. They're a skilled professional person with talents that deserve respect. And so part of what was important to me was to have an ongoing internship program. So we constantly have anywhere between 1 and 3 interns going at the same time. Whether they stay with us or whether they choose to take what they've learned and build out their own businesses is completely up to them. Hopefully, if they've enjoyed working with us, then they can be a referral partner. But I am active in industry associations. I'm active in different, networking situations where I meet other people who are in the same profession but with different skill sets, and I'm constantly referring people to others.
Well, I know you're affiliated with the Association of Virtual Assistants. That's Melissa Smith, right?
Yes.
Yes. She was on the show. I had her on the show. She was on one of the earlier episodes. Yeah.
I am a big fan. It's because of Melissa that I've been able to develop not just my firm, but myself as a human being and as a business owner. She's a tremendous asset.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she's a very strong businesswoman. So, and a wonderful human being at that.
Yes, that's true.
And also part of the recognized expert community. How about that? So, how long have you been in business for yourself now? How long has your business been up and running?
I've been in business for myself 11 or 12 years. And this iteration, business number 2, the one that I plan on keeping forever, unless there's some huge reason to sell it, we've been functioning as a firm for a little over 2 years now.
Ah, okay. And tell us more about who you work with, or who you're, what are the clients you serve, and if people were interested in working with you, what that might look like.
Well, we serve 2 different ideal clients. The characteristics of both are that it's fast growth in need of organization and guidance. The internal communications piece usually lands in a company that has either just scaled or has gone through really fast growth, and they realize that kitchen table way of connecting doesn't work anymore. They need processes in place in order to leverage the talent and skills and ideas that their teams have. So we go in and we help identify what type of communication you are exchanging. Like, is it reports, or is it short bursts of information, or is it, idea exchange? Where you're communicating it, what platforms are you using? So platform assessments and identifying whether or not you're using those platforms correctly, or if you're not using them correctly, are you at least using them incorrectly consistently? Then, when are you communicating? So are you creating policies that support our current environment where burnout is, if you're not seeing it right now, let me just hip you to this. It's right around the corner. Whatever we're seeing as far as burnout today is nothing compared to what we're going to see around the holidays, which is unfortunate, but it's true. Plan now. Distribute your fanny in the seat policies, not just to have fannies in the seats, but to give people permission to disengage. People need that explicit permission to stop working, whether it's to school their children, walk their dog, do their laundry, any list of reasons why they may want to step away and go live their best life. That's super important. And then how are you communicating? And that really is a nod toward culture. As we are diversifying our workplaces, which is we desperately need to do that and keep doing that and keep focusing on it and, far, far into the future. That needs to be important. We're not just looking at a diversity of races. We're looking at a diversity of ideas and experiences and ages. So, how are you communicating really means, like, are you engaging in focus groups and surveys? And are you creating an environment where people feel comfortable, if not excited, to be innovative and problem solve? Identifying, kind of like the beginning of my career, identifying where there are broken process and bottlenecks, and going up to the boss and saying, you wanted us to go from A to B. I think I can take us from A to D with these ideas. What do you think? Over the next quarter, can we train this? So that's what that client looks like. And then the executive virtual assistant is more for the organizational leader or the entrepreneur who is just in need of some really high caliber, talented organization and management. Like the person who says, I can't get everything done. I can't do the business building while all this other administrative stuff also needs to be tended to. I want somebody who can listen to what I need and get it done right the first time.
So it sounds very clear in terms of how your business is sort of split in those two areas. It also sounds like it's very service oriented, but it's also consultative at the same time, and that you bring a tremendous amount of expertise, but that you're also trying to help your clients develop their own muscles around some of this as well, that it's not just about doing it for them, but sort of enabling them to develop themselves as well in some respects.
100%. What we want to do is build the foundation that all the rest of the business building happens on top of. So if we give you the tools to use and teach you that as you scale, you augment them or shift them in to the left or to the right or whatever, then as you move forward, you don't constantly need an in-house internal comms department. You can have a seasonal base touching or an annual review and tweak things a little bit and still know that you are on a plan that makes sense historically and into the future. And it's the same thing with supporting someone on the executive assistant side of things. If you help someone build things out correctly, for example, a team of one benefits from creating standard operating procedures. And most people would say, why? That just sounds like a boring waste of time. Well, actually, when you're a team of one, if you start even if they're sloppy operating procedures,
Right.
start documenting what you're doing.
Right.
As you build, it'll take you half the time to train up the first
Right.
person that you bring on.
Right.
Or if
Right.
you're overworked and it's been 9 days in a row and you can't remember the way that you went through your brand new banking and invoicing system last time, having those sitting on the side of your desk so you can refer to them is always helpful rather than clicking around and hunting and pecking.
Right, right, right. Wow, I can imagine there are a lot of people and a lot of companies out there who could really take full advantage of what you have to offer. Are you working all over the map with people, or mostly locally, or?
We are actually, I have team members in every time zone in America, and we predominantly do North American work. We have some clients that are in Europe, but I'll be perfectly honest, between the flexibility of my team and the flexibility of those clients, I feel as though those are really unique partnerships because it requires a certain level of patience to be 6 and 7 time zones away from the people that you're supporting.
Right, right.
But it does boil down to communication there. If you know your client well enough and you understand their expectations, then you, while they're asleep, can understand what to prioritize, how to go about doing the work and giving it back to them so that there's not a lot of synthesis or time wasted there. It's just something that's an actionable product.
Wow. This is great. I wish I could put you in a bottle and sell you, or have you right here. Right here. I could use you right here.
I'm here anytime you need me, Tammy.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm curious. Clearly you've navigated a lot of different territory, and for yourself career wise, and you're navigating a lot of territory for your clients as well in terms of helping them along their paths to growth. For my listeners, I'm wondering what advice you might give them as they start to make certain transitions or changes. A lot of the people listening to this are thinking about what their next move might be, or how they might maybe have to overcome certain barriers, or maybe reframe something in their minds to get to the next thing. What would you say is a key piece of advice that you might offer them that is helpful in terms of thinking through transitions?
Are you talking about career transitions, like an entirely new skill set, or transition like a job, same skill set, different environment?
Well, it could be either way. I think it could be either way. I think there are a lot of people out there who are, especially right now, are rethinking, can I continue to do what I've been doing? Or, do I need to think about doing something new? Or how do I take what I have been doing and try to fit it into a new culture or a new environment, or do it a little differently? I think, your example is a perfect example of, I think a lot of people would like to think that they could take their skill set and fit it into a new industry or a new culture or a new environment somewhere, because there's a lot of new environments out there now because of the world is changing so much. So in a way, even if you are taking, the same skills or tools with you, if you're using them in a new work culture or a new industry, even though they're the same skills, it could look quite different. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I do. I think there are a couple really, really basic pieces of advice that I'd share. And this is maybe where having that old set of grandparents comes in handy.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
One of them is that, be patient. There are so many shiny things out there right now that shiny isn't always the best direction to, hitch your cart to, the start, hitch your wagon to. be patient, not just with yourself, but be patient with the times that we're in, because we need to make sure that as we look into the future, we're looking at the stable tracks that are in front of us, and we're reminding ourselves that it's really the tried and true human traits that are going to pull us through. So patience, honor, courage, be prepared to experience some discomfort as you're going along that new path, with the faith and the belief in yourself that you'll make either the decision to stay and it will be the right one, or you'll make the decision to change, or the hot word on everybody's list right now, pivot, and find a better place. But don't cut and run too fast. Invest yourself, invest your time, and always be honest. Be honest about the amount of money that you charge for your work. Be honest about what you can produce and the amount of time that you have. Be someone that other people can depend on, because by being that person now, when it's really hard, when it's less hard in the future, people will remember that.
Yeah.
And you will be the person that is the go-to for whatever skill set that is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is great advice. I know that when I have achieved a really great change in my career in the past, the one thing that I know really helped me was to maintain patience.
It's hard. I mean, I feel like a hypocrite saying it, because I can, get frustrated with the best of them. I'm probably blessed that I only have dogs, because I can swear in front of them and nobody gets, sideways about it. But yeah, patience is a hard one, but it's worth practicing. Patience and gratitude, they're both practices that I try and engage in every day. I make it a point to start out my day realizing what I'm grateful for right then and there. And I make it a point to end my day with a couple that I didn't list in the morning, and then some things I could improve upon the following day.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's great. Well, that's great. Great advice. These are things we all need to be reminded of. So, Lizabeth, what's the best way for people to find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Oh, terrific. First, just know I'm super excited to be in touch with people. Our website, I should say, is l12services.com. That's the letter L, 12services.com. And you can always find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
LinkedIn is my preferred social network spot. We're in other places, but I guarantee you, if I'm actually going to be spending my time on social media, it's me that's there on LinkedIn. And my name is spelled a little unusual. So Wesely-Casella, just think of the E's in all the wrong spots. There's no E on the beginning of my first name. The E's are in the wrong spots in my last name. So it's Wesely-Casella.
Great. Well, Lizabeth, thank you so much for being here today. Everything that you just said will be in the show notes as well. So people will be able to find you. And really appreciate your time today.
Oh, Tammy, thank you so much. I always enjoy hanging out with you, but this has been super fun.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Lizabeth Wesely-Casella. It was so interesting to speak with her to learn about her personal and professional journey. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources or links mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them on the blog page of my website at www.tammygoulerloeb.com. Just look for episode 099. Are you thinking about what your next professional move is going to be? Perhaps there was a thought or idea that was sparked by listening to today's podcast that you'd like to put into motion in your life. or maybe you're just feeling a little stuck. Get specialized group and individualized support, insights, and accountability from a brilliant mix of professional women in a safe, non-judgmental creative space. Join one of my small hybrid mastermind coaching groups. They are starting on a rolling basis. You can learn more at https://bit.ly/navigating career change. If you were inspired by this episode with Lizabeth, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at www.tammygoularloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcasts button and follow the instructions provided there. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.